1995 Buick Park Avenue with a 3.8 liter engine. Today it's in for a winter readiness checkover. A few points of this checkover are we're going to check the battery health, we're going to check wipers, we're going to check the freeze point of the coolant antifreeze, and we're going to also look at tires. So upon initial inspection, after raising this vehicle, I've noticed there is quite a few issues, especially with this tire right here. One of the major issues is the tread. If you were to measure with a tread depth gauge, the tread right now is 1/32 of an inch on the outside edge. From the center, it is 2/32 of an inch. Now, as I've said in past videos, 2/32 of an inch fails New York State inspection. You need to have above 2/32 of an inch tread to pass the legal New York State inspection. And with it being winter, this is incredibly dangerous. Another one of the problems with this tire is you can actually see on this outer edge, and I'll be very careful to touch that so I don't actually stab my hand, steel cord is coming through. So we have worn now past the vehicle's, or the tire's tread. We have worn past all the tread plies, and we are now getting into the steel corded structure. This is incredibly dangerous, and you could actually get a ticket for driving on a tire like this because it is very unsafe. The third thing that I noticed, the tire pressure, the low tire light was on. More than likely, there is some sidewall damage to this tire that you can see, and it's actually starting to, it probably hit a curb and it actually wore right into the sidewall structure, more than likely causing a very slow leak. But nonetheless, this vehicle, there's too many issues with this tire on this vehicle, so we are going to definitely have to address this. The only solution is to get a new tire. The tire on the other side is also in very similar condition, so we're going to need 2 tires for this vehicle. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove this, and we're going to go over to the tire machine. Okay, first step in changing the tire, we need to remove the valve core using our valve core removal tool. First step in removing this tire, I'm actually going to remove the wheel weights, just so I don't forget later on. So I'm going to remove these first, using our tool right here. Basically all you need to do with this, you use this pointed end here. That actually locks into this part of the wheel weight, and you just pry and pull it out. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, just like that, nice and easy. Double check the rim, make sure there's no stick-on weights or any other weights surrounding the tire, which there's not. So now we can go ahead and break the bead. Mount the tire on the table, clamp it in, make sure it's tight. Going to bring our arm over. Okay, so I like to position the valve stem on this particular machine. I like to position the valve stem right almost directly after the duct's head. Now, because this doesn't have a tire pressure monitor, it doesn't so much matter, but it is important to get into a good habit, especially on newer vehicles, that you need to watch for tire monitors. Okay, so I'm going to set this up just like this. I'm going to use my tire bar here. Okay, so it has two ends. It's more whatever's going to work for the specific application. So I'm going to go ahead and use this end. Okay, using the duck's beak, going to push down on the opposite side of the tire, pry, get the bead over the duck's head, okay, while holding the tire bar there. Okay, I'm going to slowly rotate it. Now we need to make sure that the bead of the tire is in the drop center of the rim. Otherwise, it will rip the bead underneath this part of the bead here. Okay, this is rubber. Underneath it, there is steel cords. That's what gives the tire its structure. And steel cords will not stretch. So if you are not in the drop center of the rim, you are just going to ruin the tire. So we're going to repeat this step for the other side. And I like to switch ends and use this end. It seems to make it a little easier to get that bottom bead up and over the duck's beak. Same thing, we're going to lift up, pry it down, rotate her off. And again, if this did have a tire monitor, you would have to be mindful of its location so you do not break it. They are generally about $100. You do not want to be buying the customer a new tire monitor. Okay, here we have our brand new tire. It is the same size. I did double check that. 205/70 R15s. Okay, it is a non-directional tire, meaning I can mount this either way, and the tread pattern is symmetric from side to side, so it does not matter how I mount this. So that is not a concern of mine at the moment. First step in installation, you need to lube the bead. Okay, make sure you get both sides. You know, can be pretty generous with the lube. We do not want to ruin the new tire. Okay, another thing to note is this yellow dot right here. Some tires have this, some tires do not. What this is indicating is this is the point in the tire that you want to try to line up with the valve stem. Sometimes there's this yellow dot, sometimes there's not. It's nice if it is on the tire, just so it's a reference point where to line it up. So, first step when we are going to go ahead and mount this tire to this rim, and this may be a little difficult to see on this first step. Now, unlike removing the tire where we went over the duck's head, right, and rotated the rim, we're actually going to put the bead over the duck's back and under the head, like so. And this will be easier to see on the second step. Again, making sure the bead is in the drop center of the rim. Rotate it on. Okay. Should be easier to see now. So that's the setup. Again, make sure your bead is in the drop center. Slowly rotate the tire on. We're going to go ahead and put some air in it. Manufacturer tire pressure specification for this is 36 psi. Go ahead, set the beads. And I will finalize the pressure with my digital tire pressure gauge so I have an accurate reading. Don't always trust the gauges on these machines. Okay, so we're going to check pressure, make sure we put our valve cap back on. Then I'm going to go ahead and balance this tire. Now that we've set our tire pressure with the digital tire pressure gauge, we need to balance this tire. So, unlike the machines at school, you have to manually put in your tire measurements. So this is a 15-inch diameter rim. Okay, it is 7 inches wide, and the offset from the end is 5 inches. Okay. Now, we have to pick, before we mount this, we have to pick the correct cone, okay, that fits in the center bore of the rim, which I've already checked. This one fits in there perfectly. We have our spring. This actually goes behind the cone. You will see how I mount this. So this is going to sit almost on there, something like this. Then we have our locking mechanism that actually tightens the rim to the balancer. So I'll go ahead and set that up so you can see. We're going to put our spring on first. Place our cone. Set our tire on there, making sure it's centered on the cone. We go ahead, put our locking mechanism on there that threads on. I always give it a check spin to make sure I'm mounted, that I'm mounted on there straight, not crooked. Okay. And this machine, there is no lid on it. You have to manually spin the tire. When you hear the machine beep, you are going fast enough. So on this, you spin until you see both arrows there. Notice that it's off to the left. So that means on the top dead center of the rim, on the inside edge, we need 1/2 ounce of weight. We keep spinning. You can also see on the other side, we also need, at this point right here, we also need 1/2 ounce. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to set that up and give it a check spin, make sure we are balanced. Here's our weight, just so you can see. It's 1/2 ounce. And you can see on the screen, we are perfectly balanced. So now that we have balanced our new tires, I'm going to go ahead and install this on the front of the vehicle. Your best tires, no matter what vehicle, always go on the front. Reason for that is you do 70 to 90% of your braking with the front of the vehicle. You do your steering with the front of the vehicle, and this is a front wheel drive. Now, the torque spec for these lug nuts is 100 foot-pounds. So, first thing I'm going to use is I'm going to basically tighten the lug nuts first with the impact using a torque stick. Okay, this is not a precision torque device. What this actually allows me to do is basically tighten the lug nuts, and instead of, well, it'll keep you actually from over tightening. Because this is an aluminum rim, you could damage the rim or stretch the lug stud, which ultimately either or could result in the wheel falling off. So the first step is to tighten the lug nuts with the torque stick. Then you have to still final torque with the torque wrench. That is a precision torque device. And again, we'll set it to 100. Being that this is a torque stick and you're using an impact on it, it is rated for 100. However, it'll probably be somewhere around 90 to 95, depending on, again, the strength of the impact and, right, if you're using a battery or an air tool. If the impact is very weak, again, it's not going to stop at 100. Also, depending how long you hold the gun on it, could change, but this just basically keeps you from over tightening. And we torque these also in a star pattern, right, going across from one another, essentially creating a star. You notice you hit a point and the socket and stick will stop spinning. That means you are at approximately 100 foot-pounds. So now we're going to bring this down, and I'm going to do a final torque with the torque wrench. Okay, so I've got my torque wrench here. I need to set this to 100 foot-pounds. Right now I am at 0. Now to set this wrench, as you do here, you have your dial. Right, you turn it and you will see this scale begin to rotate. Right, so we're in increments of 25. Okay, I'm going to set that right at 100. Take this, put that over the dial. Okay, and now we are ready to use this. So, as I'm tightening, you will hear this wrench click. Okay, that means you are at your desired torque. And I always do it twice just to be sure. Right, and you're going to torque this in a star pattern, going around making sure you hit all the lug nuts. Right, you can see I was not perfectly at 100. That's why you always go over with a wrench. Right, so there's 1 click, 2 clicks. Okay, move on to the next one. There's your click. I back off. Click it again just to be sure. This is a perfect example of why you torque with a wrench. Okay, all 5 are torqued to spec. Make sure I put my cap back on the rim there. Don't want to forget that. The customer would not be very pleased if I lost that. But that concludes this portion of the service. Oh, and before I forget, you actually have to make sure you set this torque wrench back to 0 because there is calibrated springs in here. If you hold tension on them, this could become inaccurate over time.